we found that there were two key dimensions that companies were looking at. So the first dimension is a changing business design. Most companies now are really thinking about their work and all of their operations in a controlled value chain. There are steps along the value chain. You control each of those steps. And instead, what's really happening is the world is moving more to a network. There's a web of relationships that you have. You're not just having contracts with suppliers, but you're starting to think about partnerships. The second dimension is how familiar are you with your customers? So we found a lot of companies trying to figure out who is your end customer. Most of them were completely clueless as to who was actually using their product. Although we found some companies who were really good at knowing who their end customer was and what their purchase history was, as well as, say, their purchase history with competitors. Where you started to see a distinction is the companies that could start to figure out what was the motivation for purchase, as well, and then you had some companies who were actually really trying to get at the nub of the problem. What is the problem that the customer is trying to solve? And that seemed to be a really intense familiarity, a very deep familiarity with your customer. The first business model is a supplier. A supplier is a company that sells its products through other companies. So think about a company like Sony that makes televisions and then sells it through a retailer. Suppliers really have potential for a loss of power. We think it's a fairly common business model right now. We've seen it a lot in manufacturing companies and actually many other companies. One of the issues around suppliers is how do you maintain your low cost, but at the same time really innovate? And then what is it you need to do to start to either change business models or make yourself more valuable? The second business model is an omnichannel model. This is a model where the customer controls the way that they interact with you. And that means that any company that wants to be in this business model has got to be thinking about operating in a multiple of channels and making it seamless across those channels. We see a lot of banks and retail in this business model, or at least trying to achieve this business model. The business model modular producer, you have to be technology agnostic. You have to be great at all technologies if you're going to plug and play into anybody's ecosystem. And because there's this plug and play aspect to it, these companies have to be innovating constantly. If you think that you can, that the ecosystem driver, the platform, the owner of the platform can unplug you, then you're always going to have to be investing in innovation so that you stay at the top of your game. We think of PayPal as being pretty much the quintessential modular producer. And then the last business model is ecosystem driver. You all know what an ecosystem driver is. Amazon is an ecosystem driver. It's a very lucrative, but a very hard business model to do here. This is one where you have to be the destination for your customers. You have to be great at customer experience. You have to also have low cost, but you get the data from every transaction. And if you're a good ecosystem driver, you're going to clip the ticket of every transaction that goes across your platform. To end up, I want to say that in terms of thinking seriously about your business model, it's really not if you're going to think seriously about it. It's really about when.